Welcome to C Programming Tutorials. This is a production of YouTube channel Learnorama and the Facebook page Awesome C Programming Tutorials in High Def. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel yet, I would suggest that you do so. This way you will be able to be notified as soon as I post any new tutorials. And I would also appreciate if you could become the fan of the Facebook page Awesome C Programming Tutorials in High Def. So in today's tutorial, we are going to learn about how to pass two-dimensional arrays into functions. Okay. In the previous tutorials, we learned about the two-dimensional arrays. Today, we will see how we can pass them to the functions so that we can do some operations on them. So let's get started. So we learned before that we actually could define a two-dimensional array using something like this. Okay, int, which would be the type of each element in that array. Int followed by the name of the array, which you could name whatever you want. Let's say we call it my array, and then you specify the number of rows it has, and then you specify the number of columns it has. Let's say it has 4 columns and 3 rows. And we also learned that we could initialize it like something like this. You don't have to initialize it. You could actually ask the user to input the values, but to make things fast, we will just go ahead and initialize this array with some values. Okay. There you go. So we have declared an array and we have initialized its value. Now let's say we want to add all the elements in this array, in this two-dimensional array. How can we do that? One thing obviously would be to basically run 2 nested loops right here and just visit each element and keep adding. But we want to learn how to pass the array to functions. So let's say we write a function that will take this array, we pass this array to that function, and it gives us back the sum of all these elements. Okay, so let's see. Let's write the call. That's the beauty of the function. You don't even have to write the function itself before you start using it. Okay, of course you have to eventually define the function itself, but you could definitely just imagine that that function has already been defined. Let's call it add, and then you pass it the array, and it gives you back the sum of all the elements here. Okay, and then we just print out the sum. Oops, sorry. We need to print out the sum, which is stored in result. So now remember, see, this is the cool thing about writing functions or using functions. We have to write this program which would basically add all the elements in this array. All we did was declare an array, define basically all the elements, the values of all the elements, and then we just imagine that there is a function that takes this array, and it actually, we call that function and it will give me back the sum. So my main program is done. My main function is done at this point. The only thing remaining is a subtask now, how to define this function. So this is how you should always do your programming. You should always define functions and just start using them. You should always start using the functions first, and not worry about the definition of those functions. Just define them clearly, that what they take as input and what they return, and that's it. So this is called prototyping. So let's write down how the prototype or the header of the function is going to look like. So obviously we know that the return value of this function would be an integer because all the elements are integer. The sum of all the integers would be integer. So let's write the int as the return value. and then the name of the function, and then the parameter. Okay, now this is the dummy parameter, so we have to you know declare its type and stuff. So just the way we declared this array here, we could declare this parameter, dummy parameter, just the same way. Okay, 3 4. This is how you pass an array, and this is how you define a prototype that takes the array as the parameter. So all you have to do, just like we define the array right here, or declare the array right inside the function, we basically declare the parameter the same way. One difference is that you don't have to specify both dimensions. You could just specify only the second dimension, the number of elements in the second dimension. If you remember, when we learned about the single dimensional arrays, one-dimensional arrays, we said that this is how you could pass the one-dimensional array. Okay, but for two-dimensional array, you have to specify the second number of elements in the second dimension, which is columns. So total number of columns you have to specify. And in general, if there are like three-dimensional arrays, if you're third dimension, you have to specify the third number of elements in the third dimension right here. Okay, you could basically in short you could actually skip only the first element, first dimension, but for all the other dimensions you have to specify that, because this is how compiler is able to locate individual elements inside this array. Otherwise it won't be able to locate that. So let's write the function. So first of all, we will have to declare the sum, where we were going to store the sum in. Okay, the variable that's going to get the sum. So let's initialize it to 0, and then we have to visit all the elements. So we have to declare row and column as the loop counter variable. And then we saw in our last tutorial that whenever we have to go through all the elements in a two-dimensional array, we have to use nested loops, right? So we do the nested loops right like this, less than 4 column plus plus, and then we add the individual elements. So whichever element we are in, we just add that into sum and then store that value into sum as well. So as we said before, this is the same statement as writing something like this. So take the current value of sum, add this element into it, and then store it back into sum, so that we can use this new value of sum in the next iteration. Okay, and since we have only one statement after this for loop and one statement after this for loop, we don't really have to put the braces. It's always a good idea to do that, but you don't have to. Now after we are done with it, at this point we have the sum of all the elements in the variable sum, so we return that sum. So this completes our function, the definition of the function add at this point. Okay, so together these two functions actually do what we wanted it to do, display the sum of all these elements. So let's see if it works. Okay, error, compilation error. It says expected semicolon before dot token, colon token. So by accident I wrote colon instead of semicolon. That's not right. And here we go, we ran this program and it says sum is equal to 78. Looks right to me. The sum should be about 78, right? So this is how you actually pass the parameter, pass two-dimensional array to a function as a parameter. I hope you liked this tutorial. If you did, please give a thumbs up, and if you didn't, please give a thumbs down, and send me some comments on this YouTube page or maybe on the Facebook page. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Bye.